My dreams are like torment, my every moment. Voices on my brain of friends that were slain. Friends like Loal who died by my side of starvation. We used to raid villages, stealing chickens, goats and sheep, anything we could eat. I knew it was rude, but we needed food. And therefore I was forced to sin to make a living. Sometimes you gotta lose to win. Never give up, never give in. Left home at the age of 7. 1 year later, I live with an AK-47. By my side, slept with one eye open wide. Run dark, play dead and hide. I've seen my people die like flies. Yiggish, yiggish, I'm on a fight. Day and night, sometime I'm doing wrong in order to make things right. It's like I'm living a dream first time. I'm feeling like a human being, The children of Darfur, your empty bellies on the telly, now it's you that I'm fighting for. Ask God questions, what am I here for? Why are my people poor? Innocent people die every day. And I ask God why and why. When the rest of the children were learning how to read and write, I was learning how to fight. That's my story.
How many people of you are familiar with Emmanuel Jal, just out of curiosity? Oh, wow, that's amazing. So this is really the story of Emmanuel Jal, and many of you who don't know him, he's a former child soldier from south of Sudan turned international rap star. And the reason why I wanted to start my talk with this clip, which is the opening scene of Warchild, is to really show you the profound power that storytelling has. And in this case, it's Emmanuel Jal's story. Throughout the day, you hear a lot about waste. Wasted food, wasted resources, wasted brains, wasted talent. As a filmmaker, waste plays a really big role in storytelling as well. In this case, it's the millions of lives lost in the war of Sudan. I will share with you a couple of other stories throughout this presentation, but I also want to talk to you about our own waste of our own talents. A lot of us do things that we really don't like, and we are not fulfilled professionally, personally by them. And this is quite important to me because this is how I discovered that I wanted to be a filmmaker. First of all, I believe that documentaries have a profound power to really challenge our perception of the world. They illuminate the human condition. They give us an insight into the narratives of real people with their aspirations, dreams, and hopes. Think back to some of your own experiences watching documentaries, like, for example, Senna, about legendary race car driver Ayrton Senna, about Man on Wire, the tightrope walker, the daredevil tightrope walker, and so evoke some of this emotion that you have had. So that's really the power of storytelling, and I feel that a lot of big Hollywood movies cannot accomplish it because they're not real or in the moment. I also believe that documentaries can affect real positive change. For example, An Inconvenient Truth is an obvious one. No film like this brought to us the perils of climate change. Or Super Size Me, all of you are familiar with the film, but what you may not know is after the film's release, McDonald's took all its supersized options of the menu and started even introducing healthy eating habits. They claim the timing was coincidental. I don't know, make up your own mind. Why am I telling you all of this? I believe at heart we're all storytellers, we're all creative people. It's in our DNA, it's how we were raised, who we are. Since the beginning of time, we gathered together to tell stories and exchange ideas. But like many traditions, also the storytelling culture is changing and even dying. We don't tell stories on a day-to-day basis anymore as individuals. It's become a profession rather than an exchange that we do as a daily activity. I want to share with you the way I got started in documentary filmmaking, and I'm really hoping it may inspire some of you sort of to take on a creative art form, because a lot of people I've met over the years always tell me, I would love to do something, but how do you go about it, and how did it happen? A little bit of background about me. I was born in Singapore. I'm half Egyptian, half German, to a diplomatic family. I moved around a lot, lived in the Middle East, in Asia, in Europe. I currently live in Washington, D.C. After graduating from college, I worked for a large media company. Typical big company, very hierarchical, risk-averse, uncreative. And in 2005, I sort of had this thing. It was like this, I had enough. I need to change things up, and I decided I was going to move to Dubai. Don't ask me why. I had been a couple of times. The place seemed great on the beach. And I remember I got a job very quickly. I got on a plane, and I was sitting on the plane, and I was like, this is the dumbest decision you've ever made. Why would you leave Washington to go to Dubai? Why would you move to the desert? I get to Dubai, my anxiety increases. It's middle of August, it's hot, it's humid. The job that I'd gotten totally didn't work out. I quit 2 weeks later. But that moment really allowed me to reflect about what I wanted to do. There was no way I was going to admit defeat and move back to Washington. So I took some time and I was like, what is it really that drives me? What motivates me? Through a lot of coincidences, that moment of reflection, which I feel a lot of us are not taking for all kinds of reasons, really allowed me to come to the conclusion that I want to try to be a storyteller, to be a filmmaker. And to that, I was able to connect with Emmanuel Jal. In the past, I felt like one of these guys. You know, it sounds familiar to probably a lot of us. It's the daily grind. It's very interesting, and I'm really mentioning this because I just came across the survey, and I don't know how much appeals to you as an audience, but a recent study in the US said that 70% of all employed Americans have either mentally checked out from their profession or are dissatisfied with their job. In other words, they hate what they do all day long. 40% of all employed Americans would be willing to take a dramatic pay cut and do a creative profession. So in Dubai, I arrive, I connect, and I start working on Warchild. And I want to show, clips are not completely fine, but I want to show you a very profound and powerful part of that first experience.
Kafkana ko ma chai gui gi ma yin nyamaga bina toy ke ana so ngol kidida chete ke nyam kel ma yo ka pinyana kangan tel ngalwang ko ne deriet ana sho mai kan law sho toy ke jen nyamo ana an kan ka woro ur kan sho nga kan yo nga kan mano me shine yu kwera ka kan wan ke chan kalong sho ka toy ka kalas ngol kida sho nga pala kan sho wa ko min gor kam balar kan to la da kan sho ko wadu vodien min cha gui
I am powerless. I can't help her. I can't do anything. My small sister, she got raped 3 times, you know, and that tend to hurt people so much.
To give you some context about what just happened, this is actually right here in Nairobi, so there's a great irony that I'm back 7 years later after starting to make this film. Emmanuel reconnects with his sister. They haven't seen each other in about 2 decades. They ran into each other once very briefly. Emmanuel lives in London. His sister lives in Nairobi. And we were visiting in an apartment here in Nairobi where a lot of the people that Emmanuel supports live. His sister is there. And for the first time, uninterrupted, they're able to have a conversation. And Emmanuel learns what has happened to her in the last 20 years in which they've been separated. Essentially, she was trying to follow and find Emmanuel because she could hear him sing on the radio, and she just tried to follow him. And when they encounter, here's a story. And I wonder at that moment, what really went on in this guy's head? Was it fear, anger, resentment, frustrations? Did he think about his sister, what was going to happen in the future when he moved back to London? Would her life be wasted or lost? And what can he do about it? And that's one of the great joys of making films. Even in these terrible situations and about these terrible stories sometimes, you really immerse yourself into the life of your character. You get to know them, you get to feel them, you really get to understand who they are. And this is really very much the story of Jal. And this is the story we wanted to tell when we picked our first film. We've never done one before. But we were shocked that in Sudan, 2 million people were dying, 4 million had been displaced, and nobody really knew about it. And here was this really unique opportunity to connect with a child soldier who would become a rap star. I mean, that's a great, great tagline if you're trying to pitch films. And we spent about 5 years working with Emmanuel. And I was talking earlier a little bit about positive change. And one of the great joys that we have had as filmmakers is the effect that we had once we finished the film. At screenings, at festivals, people would come to us, little kids, and give us their pocket money. We had a famous businesswoman from the US, she gave us a check for $50,000. Just in the moment, we had no idea that this was going to happen. And through this and our engagement, we were able to help Emmanuel with one of his dreams, which is to build a school in South Sudan. We were able to provide scholarship for the rehabilitation of child soldiers. Very impactful, not only for the cause, but for us and the reward we had making this film. Wasted. This is the theme of the conference. And I want to share this project with you because we just finished it. And it's something I learned a lot about. And I mean, you have the expert here in Tristram, but I'll tell you what I was able to find out. It's a series we did in collaboration with the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting in the US. And really what we wanted to do is compare 2 countries, the United States, the world's largest food waster, and South Korea, actually the country which has probably done the most remarkable work in addressing food waste. And I want to show you one clip from the US part. Unfortunately, there's not enough time to show you the South Korea part, but let me play that clip for you as well.
In the US, about 40% of all the food never gets eaten. And that's everything from food lost on the farm all the way through to the potatoes left on your breakfast platter. Food is either going to a landfill or getting burned in an incinerator. Food is the #1 product in American landfills today.
In 2012, 34 million tons of food, a lot of reusable food, was thrown away in the United States.
When you contrast that with the fact that there are over 800 million people around the world who are still food insecure, at the same time, 1 in 6 Americans is considered food insecure. It's really a kind of a moral tragedy.
There is a huge consequence to deal with the societal problem of hunger, but also has a huge consequence in terms of the environment.
If food waste were a country, it would rank 3rd in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions.
Methane is a huge climate change problem, and that landfills are a tremendous contributor to that methane, which is 10 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
The truth is, when you get into it, you're really kind of talking about any inefficiency of the whole food system.
This is a topic I find incredibly fascinating, and as a storyteller, I've been mostly focused on characters versus subject matters. I used to tell subject to character, and this is really about telling the story of food waste minus the characters, unless they sort of fill in the gaps. And why I find this topic to be really interesting is because we all hate wasting food. If you're rich or you're poor, you've probably grown up by your parents telling you, do not throw away food. Think about the poor people who don't have enough. We all hate it. And which I think is the big incentive to be able to deal with this problem, because it's personal for us. The way I got started, I travel a lot, and every time I leave my apartment, I look at my fridge, and I'm like, I have to throw it away or give it away because it's going to go bad. And that sort of started my thinking process. If I do it, my neighbors do it, my community does it, my building does it, my city does it, exponentially the numbers are huge. And that sort of prompted the idea for it. I live in a country that sadly wastes more food than anyone else. I wanted to understand, what do communities on the grassroots level do to address food waste? And then I also wanted to know what I could do as a filmmaker to bring this issue to the attention of audiences, because again, I think it's an addressable problem. In the future, I think this topic has tremendous potential for future exploration. I'm very curious to look at the connection of climate change, poverty, water, food security, the moral question of food waste, and the connection to, again, food waste. And I think a lot of these topics are probably very familiar to you here, because this is a big issue here in Kenya these days. So a strange slide to come after food waste, but I do want to bring it to the idea of also wasted talent. It's very easy for us to become complacent. It's easy to play another game of Candy Crush, turn on the TV, take a nap, when instead we could be creating something. It's very easy to create once we get over our momentum. And here's sort of my 5 suggestions, because this is a question I get asked all the time. So I figured I would share with them, how do you become creative, and how do you engage in creative arts? I think they're very simple. Creativity is in our DNA. It's just a matter of admission. We're all creative people, just embrace it. Identify a creative outlet. Photography, dancing, poetry, writing, whatever it is, as long as it's creative, you create, and I think you become a better and more fulfilled person in your personal professional life. Overcome inertia. Don't be that guy. It's no fun. Find a collaborator. Creativity, storytelling, oftentimes require just a good partnership, someone to engage and exchange ideas with. And lastly, start with a simple idea. You don't have to travel all the way to Sudan or to Kenya or to the US to be creative. There's plenty of great stories and forms of expression right where you live. I want to close this talk with the story of Fredrik Brennan, and you will see in a second why. He's a young man I did a film about last year with Jazeera America, and let me play you that clip.
My name is Fredrik Brennan. I'm 19 years old. I am a computer programmer, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. I have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is a bone condition. It's commonly known as brittle bone disease. There's lots of different severity types. I'm somewhere in the middle of severity. Like, there's more severe cases where, you actually die. Like, and then there's like a bit less severe where, you know, you're okay, but you can't do anything for yourself. Like, you need constant attention because, you know, even trying to get out of bed will cause you to break a bone. So I'm somewhere in the middle of severity. I've broken my bones 120 times in my life. It's fortunate because a lot of people with my condition, they can't get out of bed, they can't use the toilet or take a shower by themselves. Most of my breaks were when I was a little kid, you know, just doing normal stuff. Spend a lot of time, you know, doing somewhat dangerous things. Like cooking is not really safe for me because, you know, a pan of boiling water is about as big as I am. So I have to be really careful when I'm cooking not to spill it on myself. I eat the most unhealthy diet. It's really bad. I wish I had an aid. When I was a kid, there wasn't a whole lot I could do, you know, like kid activities. You know, I had a couple choices as far as entertainment goes. You know, I could read, I could watch television, or I could, you know, go on the computer. I first got my first computer when I was 6, and I got my next computer a couple years later, which I had just for me. It was like an old desktop computer. And I literally sat at that machine all the time. When I was 13, I wrote my first computer program by myself. Naturally, I moved, you know, onto web design and things like that.
What I find so extraordinary about Fredrik, he's somebody who's been able to create something with his constraints. He's this size, he's tiny. It's amazing. Even those pictures don't do justice to what he looks like. Fredrik has and always will face roadblocks in his life. A seemingly little act like going to buy groceries is a life and death decision. We went out with him, and it is amazing what can happen to somebody like in his condition. We barely made it back because it started snowing, and he would have been stranded, and we couldn't carry him because the wheelchair is too large. He has learned to cope with his physical hurdles, but he suffers from major perception. He's always judged by what he cannot do rather than by what he thinks he's able to achieve. And yet, I believe he's actually more creative and professionally fulfilled than some of the 70% of the Americans I talked to. Last I saw about Fredrik actually was on Facebook. And there was Fredrik on a plane heading to the Philippines to work on a project, and he was sitting in first class. I think he could be an inspiration to all of us. Thank you so much.